read the entire Trump account trust agreement, all 50-some pages of it, the trust document, the brokerage addendum, the arbitration clause, all of it. And after reading every word, I still opened a different account for my son. Not because the Trump account is a bad idea, it's actually a good one. But good for the government's goal isn't the same as good for my goal. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly which one is right for your kid. Not based on headlines, based on the actual document. I'm building a 5-fund income floor in public on this channel. But this video isn't about that portfolio. It's about a decision I made for my son and the research trail that got me there. Here's the real story. I'd wanted to open a custodial account for him for a while and just never pulled the trigger. It was one of those someday tasks. Then the Trump accounts went live, the news cycle hit, and it lit a fire under me. So I went through the whole process. Application, verification, approval. I actually got a Trump account open for my son. Then I sat down and read what I just agreed to. The actual trust agreement, the brokerage addendum, all of it. And what I found in there changed my mind completely. Let's give credit where it's due, because there's real substance here. If your child was born between 2025 and 2028, the government deposits $1,000 into the account for free. Some employers can add up to $2,500 a year on top of that, tax-free. The money grows completely tax-deferred while it's in the account. No annual tax bill on dividends or gains. And structurally, it's forced discipline. The money is locked, so there's no temptation to dip into it. For a lot of families, that's a real strong deal. Free seed money, tax-deferred growth, and a policy design that nudges people towards saving for their kids who might not otherwise. Smart mechanic. Solid idea. And there's one more benefit worth calling out specifically, because it's the one that actually gave me pause, financial aid treatment. Since a Trump account converts into a retirement account, it generally doesn't count against your child for FAFSA purposes. A UTMA does. It's counted as a student asset, and that can reduce aid eligibility. If college financial aid is a real priority for your family, that's a genuine point in the Trump account's favor. Here's where reading the actual document mattered. The money is completely locked until your child turns 18. No hardship withdrawals, no exceptions. Then, and this is the part almost nobody talks about, at 18, it doesn't just unlock. It automatically converts into a traditional IRA, which means it's locked again, this time until age 59 and a half. There are a few narrow penalty exceptions along the way. First home, education, birth of a child, but even those still get taxed as ordinary income when the money comes out. Not capital gains. Ordinary income, the same bracket as a paycheck. And while the money's growing, it can only sit in plain index funds. The trust agreement calls them eligible investments. No individual stocks, no other ETFs, nothing outside that narrow lane. Contributions are also capped at $5,000 a year, and the custodian is Robinhood, which means you're bound to a mandatory arbitration clause the moment you open it. That's spelled out in Section 28 of the brokerage addendum, word for word. So the full timeline for this money is locked until 18, then locked again until almost 60, taxed at the highest rate structure when it finally comes out. A UTMA account. That's a custodial account you can open at basically any brokerage, including the one you probably already use. Solves almost every one of those problems. There's no contribution cap. You can invest in anything, index funds, individual stocks, whatever fits your strategy. The custodian can access the money anytime for anything that benefits the child, not just at 18, not just for a government-approved list of expenses. And when you eventually sell, you're taxed at capital gains rates, not ordinary income. But here's the piece that changed my mind the most, and it's something I haven't seen a single other channel explain. Something called tax gain harvesting. A minor's investment account gets a specific tax break most people don't know exists. The first $13.50 of gains and dividends each year is completely tax-free. The next $13.50 is taxed at the child's own rate, which for most kids is close to zero. Only after you cross $2,700 total does anything shift to the parent's tax bracket. Here's how you use that. Once a year, near December, you sell just enough of your winning positions to realize gains up to that $2,700 line. Then you immediately buy the same position right back. Same day, no waiting period required because the wash sale rule only blocks harvesting losses. It says nothing about gains. What that does is quietly raise your cost basis, tax-free, every single year. Do that for 14 years, and by the time your kid turns 18, you've locked in years of tax-free growth a Trump account can never touch. And you can't replicate this inside a Trump account either. Not because trading is blocked, but because it wouldn't do anything. The account's already tax deferred, so there's no current tax to avoid by selling and rebuying. And when the money finally comes out decades from now, it's taxed as ordinary income based on the withdrawal, not your cost basis. Stepping up basis for years wouldn't save a single dollar. For my son's account, I ended up going 80% QNDX. That's a NASDAQ 100 index fund with one of the lowest expense ratios available, and 20% FBTC, a spot Bitcoin fund. I seeded it with $1,000 and I'm adding $25 a week. Run that forward 14 years at a conservative growth rate, and it lands somewhere around $40,000. Run it at a more optimistic rate, and it's closer to $80,000. Either way, that money stays fully flexible the entire time. I can adjust the allocation, I can access it early if something real comes up, and none of it converts into a locked retirement account the day he turns 18. This is the same principle as periodized training, a rigid program that locks you into one exercise, one rep range, for years, no adjustments allowed, eventually stops fitting the athlete in front of it. The best long-term programs stay flexible enough to adapt as the person and the goal change. A locked account is a locked program. Flexibility compounds just as much as reps do. To be clear, the Trump account isn't wrong for everyone. If your child was born in the eligible window and you want that free $1,000, or you specifically want a savings vehicle you literally cannot touch, it does exactly what it's built to do. And the FAFSA advantage we talked about earlier is real. For a family prioritizing financial aid above everything else, that alone could tip the decision the other way. For me, it didn't. The flexibility, the tax gain harvest, the ability to actually manage this money instead of parking it, those outweighed the financial aid benefit for my situation. This isn't a video about a bad policy. It's a video about matching the tool to your specific situation. And for mine, a UTMA was the better fit. If this saved you from making the same account opening decision I almost made, hit like. Subscribe if you want the deep dive on how I actually run the tax gain harvest, step by step, once a year. And drop a comment. Which account did you choose for your kid and why?